Chapter 20, Human Influence on Ecosystem, 20.1 Food Supply. Don't forget to go back to the objectives to make sure that you covered studying the lesson correctly. Remember when we said in previous lessons that the human population is increasing exponentially, which means that they are not subjected to limiting factors. Why is that? One of the reasons is that the abundance and the availability of food, and this happens because of the increase in the food production. So, during the last few hundred years, the quantity of food produced globally increased. What does globally mean? It means universally, in all of the globe. So, the quantity of food that we make, the quantity of food produced has increased so much. Why does that happen, or why did it happen? It happened because the agricultural machinery has already developed in a very technological way. So now farmers can cultivate a great area, a very big area, using tractors and combined harvesters. So they do not need to work with their own hands and doing a limited quantity of work per day. Now machinery gives them the opportunity to cultivate a very big area in a very small time. Chemical fertilizers. So adding fertilizers like nitrate ions, for example, will increase the growth of the plant, and accordingly it will increase its yield, or the amount of fruits, or the amount of production that the plant will provide. Insecticides. Also, developing insecticides now helped us eliminate the insects that are eating from these fields, and accordingly, when you reduce competition, more for us. So insects were like a competition to us, eating the same harvest. But now when you eliminated the insects, you have more food, and accordingly, we have increase in the food production for humans. Herbicides. Remember, some herbs just come and get into the land without you cultivating them there. What happens then? What happens is that they compete with the required plants, or the plants that we need for food, over resources like mineral ions and water and the availability of room for the roots. So when we developed herbicides, we could eliminate this competition, which gave the required plants more space to grow, and accordingly they produced more yield. Selective breeding. We talked about this independently previously, that humans started developing technologies that gave them the opportunity to make sure that they breed the better crops together, or the crops that yield more together, and accordingly with every generation the yield increased and increased. So accordingly, we have the monoculture. What does monoculture mean? It means that when you get just an area and you cultivate only one crop in this area. So, for example, I will take this piece of land and I will cultivate only potatoes. So now I will get only potatoes out of this land. So I will get a very big amount of potatoes. Instead of cultivating a piece of the land with potatoes, a piece with cucumbers, a piece with tomatoes. So this will decrease the amount of production of the one item from this land. So when we did the monoculturing, this increased the yield. But doesn't it have a downside? Of course it does. So let's go through this. So what's monoculture again? It is an area of ground covered by one single crop, with almost no other species present from plants, of course. Okay? So we have advantages for monoculturing and disadvantages for monoculturing. Let's look at the advantages. Cultivating just one crop, this means that all of this land yield will grow with the same pace at the same time, and it will ripen at the same exact time. So this means that when you will use machines to cultivate or to harvest, you will use the same machines at the same time, which will reduce the cost and increase the yield. Also, if you're going to treat them with pesticides, herbicides, anything that can increase the yield, you will use the same thing at the same time. And this will produce a very huge amount of seeds and of harvest, of course. So it's going to be more profitable for the farmer. Okay, so these are the advantages. What about the disadvantages? The disadvantages of monoculturing is that there is low biodiversity for this land. What does biodiversity mean? It means that the amount of species or the amount of populations living in this area will decrease, of course, because it's a monoculture. I have only one species of plants, one population of plants. So I have a very small community of plants in this area. So this will decrease the biodiversity. Also, this will increase the number of pests that are related to this specific crop. For example, if I have the leaf hoppers that are associated with the rice plants, I will have large area filled with rice plants. Accordingly, I will have large amount of leaf hoppers. And if those insects carry some diseases, this might affect the humans living around negatively. Also, this will reduce the fertility of the soil by time. Why? Because if there is a specific plant that needs a specific type of mineral or iron, it will continue taking it out of the soil. So this soil by time will be deprived from this iron. So when you try to cultivate this crop again in the same field, you will lose the fertility of the soil, or it will not give you the same yield that you were supposed to get previously. So is this the only way we get more food? Actually, no, we get another way, or we have another way to have more food. Intensive livestock production. So when we take a lot of cattle and we put them in a small area to get more of their products like milk, wool, or meat, this is called livestocking. So when we leave just 2 cows outside, they will eat from the fresh vegetation, which is the grass, the vegetables, the fruits available in this field. They will not do a lot of damage. They will not take too much from the environment. But is this enough for us? Actually, no. That's why in developed countries, farmers started collecting a lot of cattle into a small area, and they started providing food for these cattle. Like what? Like when you put a lot of cows in a small area like this. If they were in this area by the natural environment, this environment or this ecosystem could never have been able to provide what they need. So when you put them in a room, you start providing for them from different areas and you bring them a lot of food. So they do this, farmers do this. Why? To increase again the food or the required materials that the animals can provide. Also, farmers can use medication in order to protect them from diseases. They can use some medicine to increase their milk production or wool production. Actually, livestocking also has advantages and disadvantages. Advantages are clear. More food, cheaper food, less area for animals to grow in. Instead of just leaving them out, they will take up more area. But disadvantages, diseases can spread. If one of them got a disease, it's much easier to spread this disease since they are living in a small area close together. Also, their waste can pollute the land and the waterways nearby because this is too much waste for this ecosystem. It's more than the ecosystem could handle. Also, welfare issues, because livestocking can sometimes, because of crowding, cause some welfare issues for the animals. Like most of the chicken in a chicken farm, they go blind because of the too much crowding and waste. Sometimes farmers, in order to provide enough food for this huge amount of animals, they use human food. So this will increase the price of the other food. Also usages of energy and for transportation, for cooling or heating those farms. This will increase the pollution and this will affect negatively the ecosystem. Also, water will be used in large quantities because again, this is too much animals than this ecosystem can handle. So this means that we will use up much more water than we're supposed to use. And let's answer some questions. What is a negative impact to an ecosystem of large-scale monoculture? Yes, the genetic variation of organisms is reduced because instead of having many populations living in the same area, now I have just one population, which means that less genetic variation. Intense livestocking production can be damaging to natural ecosystems. The photograph shows intensive farming of chickens. Describe the negative impact on an ecosystem of the intensive production of livestock such as chickens. So here we're going to mention the disadvantages of livestocking. As we know, effect of waste, disease spreading, use of antibiotics to protect them from the diseases that can spread, loss of biodiversity, providing food sometimes will cause monoculturing, a lot of things that we mentioned in the disadvantages. Thank you, and I hope this video helps you study.